Hi everyone, this is Brian Neal with Tradetobefree.com, and today I want to go over a couple of the trades that we have on and some that are setting up. Last week we talked about Facebook. We had Facebook in our newsletter, I think 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, breaking out of this ascending base pattern. And last week we talked about how that is a very bullish pattern and how it often leads to a climactic move or parabolic move. And that's what we're seeing right now. Facebook beat after the bell yesterday. I know they beat in all the key metrics, and the stock is up, I think, 7% after hours. So far we've seen a $20 move from the entry point here in the ascending base pattern. So again, that's three successive higher lows and three successive higher highs in a long-term uptrend, and a breaking of the third high on pretty good volume. So yeah, Facebook is one of the top growth stocks in the market, and that hasn't changed over the past year or so. Yeah, so right now I think it's up 15%. I think we're up 15% here before the bell rings. So that was a nice trade, and what we'll probably do on that is just drag a stop below the prior day's low, or maybe wait for a lower high on a 10 or 15 minute chart, intraday chart over the past few days, and just wait for it to make a lower high followed by a lower low. So that was great. Got a nice score on Facebook this morning, and AOI, Applied Optics, is still making daily highs, and now it's starting to move above these highs here it made shortly. AOI is starting to make new highs again, and we saw this hangman candle here on, if I shrink this chart a little bit and look just at the past 5 months, we got a hangman yesterday, and then today the price went above the prior day's high. So that's actually fairly bullish here, and we've got some room from the high yesterday to the top of the Bollinger Band. So like I said, they generally beat the pre-announced earnings on the bottom line, not so much on the top line, or a little bit on the top line, but mostly on the bottom line. They beat those pre-announced earnings in the first 2 quarters this year. So if they do it again, the stock could run. It could be worth 110, 115 or so. So I could see this running into the earnings release next Thursday evening, and we'll just keep our position on that. We have the rest of our swing trading position that we got into at around 70, and then we'll hold that and just drag that stop below the prior day's low as far as it'll go. And then if we get a big earnings beat next Thursday night, then Friday might set up the earnings eruptions trade. Facebook didn't set up that earnings eruptions trade this morning the way it looks. It'd have to move up another few percent to have the required gap for that trade. It still may go above the pre-market highs and then move higher from there quite a bit. So that might be a trade worth considering, although I wouldn't call it a very high probability trade at this point. And Lending Tree had a big beat apparently this morning. I haven't checked the numbers yet. Looks like they raised their guidance for 2017, the rest of this year. They're gapping quite a bit higher. The problem with the Lending Tree, though, and this happens with a lot of stocks, is that there's not a lot of pre-market activity. It's a stock that trades maybe a couple 100,000 shares a day. It is a higher price stock, so that would probably be okay, given the dollar volume is quite a bit per day. But there's no pre-market pattern that you can trade off of. I mean, you could trade above the one trade or two trades or whatever it was that traded this morning that put this blip on the chart here, but that's not enough of a pre-market pattern for me to do a day trade off those earnings. If we see a strong move initially of say 5-10%, and then a nice pullback to around the VWAP, and then a strong 5-minute candle, then a breaking of that 5-minute candle, that's something I'd be interested in. But for now, there's no pre-market pattern to trade off of, and so that's a little more risky for a day trade. And the other stock I wanted to show you was Talishop Holdings. Now, this is a stock that is in a bullish reversal pattern here, and If we go back 6 months or a year, let's go back 2 years. Yeah, we can see long term it's done pretty well. Recently, it's had a sell-off, and it's actually forming this explosive bottoming pattern. It has to get above 1450. It's well below the 200-day moving average, so the success rate on these below the 200-day moving average is lower. So, we're still interested in it because it is a very strong candlestick pattern here. And if it gets above 1450, we may jump into that and play a 4% to 10% trade over the next few days. That explosive bottoming pattern generally takes just a few days to complete. But again, below $20 and below the 200-day moving average, the success rate's lower on that pattern. And 5 below almost triggered the explosive bottoming pattern with the candlestick pattern and the long-term trend and all the other factors we look at. But there's a resistance level pretty close to the price where it is now, so we're avoiding that one today. So iRobot was a stock that beat yesterday, gapped a lot higher, and it came back during late morning and afternoon. And actually, if it closes above, or moves above, I should say, 109.40 or 109.50 or so this morning before 11 a.m., that would actually trigger the explosive bottoming pattern. But it's outside the price range again where it succeeds the most. So still something to keep on your radar and think about. The valuation seems pretty pricey right now. I think there's talk of people or the company using the data that they collect about people's home as they vacuum their home, which is kind of interesting. And I guess the value of the stock may be quite a bit more than what people are saying right now because of that data that they gather. But we'll see. I think based on the sales of its Roomba, it seems pretty overvalued right now, and so I don't know if we'll be too interested in that breakout above 109.40 unless it happens on a lot of volume. So, but there's no earnings or options trades that set up this morning that I'm seeing, and we'll eventually have one, maybe tomorrow, maybe early next week. But eventually we'll see that. And Applied Optics, looks pretty interesting for a swing trade over the next few days if it gets above 100 today. And that might be one we jump in on. But it is extended quite a bit, so you'd probably want to play with a fairly tight stop loss on that. And then, play for the uptrend into earnings next Thursday night. So, all right, that's about it, guys. We'll talk to you soon.